Beginning on Daf, the Shabbos Daf, Kuf Gimel, or someone said Kif Gimel, 5 lines down at the top of the Yomid. We continue to explain the halacha of the previous Mishnah, which we opened up this parak, the 12th parak, and the Shabbos parak Aboina, which talks about the malacha of building on Shabbos. So I just we're going to speak about today's Daf on Shabbos Daf Kuf Gimel. I'll share this corresponds to Bekal Zech and Cheskel, to any time Daf Chaim. Appreciate everyone who's joining us. Is the halacha of Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg said in the Mishnah, interestingly, that if you bang a hammer on the anvil, as long as, even if it's done during the work, you can be chayiv because it's like fixing something. We'll talk about exactly what is that fixing. Additionally, how much one has to do in order to be chayiv, which relates to the next Mishnah of plowing, regarding cutting certain things that have dried up, like certain types of pruning. Additionally, the Mishnah after that is going to speak about the malacha of kaisev, of writing. And we're going to talk about writing with the left hand, how many letters do you have to write, and what types of letters. Also, when one writes a mem sofit, which we call an endemem, in place of a regular mem, is that going to be kosher or not, and how that relates to the laws of Shabbos too. So important in terms of concepts, we're going to have is what's known as psik reshe. Psik reshe means something is inevitable. Like you say, like, you don't want to kill the chicken, fine, but if you cut up the head, obviously the chicken's going to die. That's psik reshe. You cut up the head, obviously it's going to die. So even though Rabbi Shimon holds Davar Shem Miskav is mutter, you would agree by psik reshe that's going to be usher because you can't say it's unintended. You obviously know it's going to happen. Additionally, the concept of what's called psucha and stuma in the parsha, in the Sefer Torah, we have certain parashas that are closed, which are stuma, and some are psucha, it's left open. Additionally, we're going to speak about regarding the certain types of letterings, parashas in the Torah, like shira, which is Yashir, or Hazinu, which the song is like written like half a brick on top of a brick. It's specifically written in a certain formation. Begin the current daf, and like we said, 5 lines down at the top of the Yomid, Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph. The Mishnah said, after it spoke about that you're liable for building, for chiseling, for using a sledgehammer, for drilling, we said even a small amount, as we discussed in the previous daf, what's the utility of a small amount? You're going to be chayav. And then the Mishnah said, Zakal, this is the rule. Anything that, if you're doing the work, and the work will endure, if you do it on Shabbos, you're going to be chayav. Says the Gemara, Zakal, this is the rule, Lasuyimai. What are you coming to include in saying this is the rule, as if you're coming to add something? We already spoke about all these types of cases you're chayav in the kosher. Says the Gemara, Lasui is coming to include a chiddush. The chak kafiza, if someone carves out a kafiza, which is 3/4 of a kav, bikava, in a large clump, a large piece of, let's say, clay, which is fit to carve out a space of a kav, he only carved out 3 lugin, which is 3/4 of a kav, even though he himself is going to ultimately end up carving out more. But since there are those who do maintain it, the amount that he originally carved out, which is less, so then it's already considered significant. That's the chiddush of kol oisa malacha malachta miskayemes. If it's a work that it would sustain, meaning people endure like that, some people will keep it like that. If he's going to be chayiv, even though he's going to carve out more, he's going to do the malacha that he's doing even more than that. But since it's already something that people would keep it like that, it's already significant action to be chayiv for that amount that he carved out. Now we continue with the halacha of the Mishnah. So Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, he said, we spoke about the malacha of makah b'pater, she's striking with a hammer, which we said that you're banging on the anvil. Now, he said, makah b'kornis ala sadin. He says, if you're banging, in general, in the middle of doing work, you're banging the hammer on the anvil, chulu, you're going to be chayiv. So the Gemara says, my cover, what are you doing? I mean, like we explained, makah b'pater means to say that if you're finishing off, let's say, the malacha, but if you're banging in the middle of working on it, you're banging on the anvil, what's the liability? What are you doing here that's a malacha? It's not on the thing that you're working on. So Rabbi Tabai, they both say, because he's training his hand, which is, anyone that knows, like you're playing sports, if you're playing tennis, or you have to get used to, and you have to focus, the way to do it, that's going to be a good shot. So when you're banging the hammer, so you have to know when to do a big bang, a small bang. So by hitting the anvil, it's helping him train his hand, and therefore that's considered malacha. So the Gemara says, Kashabah b'nei Rechava. The sons of Rechava had a difficulty with this. If that's the case, that you're chayiv, because when you're hitting the anvil, so you're practicing how to do it. So chazum nasim Shabbat. Let's say you're watching a craftsman on Shabbos. You're taking a nice little walk. You're passing a nice little quaint shop, and you see the craftsman working over there, but Gomar, and then you learn from him. You're going to be chayiv just from watching him, because you're also learning how to do it. Well, why, if you're hitting the anvil and you're like training your hand, is that a malacha more than, let's say, watching a guy working on Shabbos and like you're learning from him? You didn't do any malacha over there. They say you're right. What's the problem about hitting the anvil? Those who would pound the sheets of which were used, the gold sheets that were used to plate the crushim. The crushim were the planks in the Mishkan. It would be gold plated, although it was made out of wood. You didn't see the wood; it was gold plated. So those sheets, they would pound them in the Mishkan. Oisikim, they did this, meaning what would they do? And therefore, we learn all the malachas from the Mishkan. They would hit 3 times on the metal sheet. Then one time, for every 3 times, one time they would hit on the anvil. Why would they do that? They wanted to smooth out the hammer, that it shouldn't pierce the metal sheet, because the metal sheet was very thin. As Rashi says, he sees those who work with coins in his place in France, or whatever it was, that they would do that, which is they wanted to make sure the hammer was smooth. That is a malacha, as we learned from the Mishkan. They would hit it on something smooth, the hammer, not on the metal sheet. Every 4th time would hit on that. They would do that to smooth out the hammer. That's considered malacha, as we learned from the Mishkan. Tana malacha similar in the Brisa. He says, if someone goes and hits the hammer on the anvil during the work, again, the anvil is that big metal thing that you see that they have things that they bang on. That's what the anvil is. Because those who would bang on the metal sheets in the Mishkan, they did this again. That would be the malacha makabe patish. Essentially, you're fixing the hammer. That's finishing off the hammer. When you bang it on that, make it ready so now it could be used again. And they would do that every 4th time. That's makabe patish. That's the chiddush of Shimon Wheel. That even that is considered a malacha on Shabbos. Now we continue with the next Mishnah. Like we said, we discussing different malachas over here in this parak. And additionally, we're going to be speaking about kol shu, different malachas that the liability is even a minute amount. Like we said, by boina, makabe patish, even the small amount you chayiv. Here also chayrish. Now we're talking about plowing. Whoever does a plowing, kol shu, even a minute amount, and so too hamanachish, someone has weeds, he does weeding, vamakarsim, or which is a similar thing called pruning. Pruning is you take off some dry branches from the trees to make it better. Or vahamazarid. Zarid is also pruning, but it's actually pruning moist branches from this year. Because sometimes there's too many branches and it weakens the tree and it dries it up, so they break off the branches, so it's a certain type of a pruning, but when they're moist branches. So here also, if you do any of these malachas, it's going to be kol shu, even a minute amount, chayiv, you're going to be chayiv. Now let's say hamalakit eitzim. Let's say someone is gathering wood, meaning he's by doing ketzitza, by breaking off from the tree. So it depends what his intention is. Im lisakin is if his intention is to fix the tree or the ground, so he detaches it from where it's attached. So then kol shen, even by small minute amount, like we said, that's the malacha of chayrish or whatever malacha it is that he's doing. It's to fix that even minute amount would be considered significant. Im lahasik, if he's breaking off the branches to burn it as fuel, then it's the amount of cooking an easy egg, which we explained in the previous stuff. That's an egg, that's a gregris, a dried fig size of the egg of a chicken. Why is that called the be'ekala? Because we had previously said it's the easiest, the quickest to cook from all the eggs of any animal. So if your intention is to use it as fuel, so then it's how much you could use for fuel. And so to hamalakin asabim, if someone's gathering grass, so imla sakin, if it's to fix the ground, then kosher, even the minute amount is going to be considered significant. Imla behema, if it's to feed the animal, it's kamaloi piagadi, it's the mouthful of a kid goat. Again, depending what your intentionality of it is, that's going to be the malacha that you're doing, and therefore it depends on what it is. Now the Gemara says regarding that of plowing, the Gemara says l'may chazi. What utility does if you plow just a little bit? Why is that considered significant to be chayiv a minute amount? Says the Gemara, chazi lebizur the kara. It's fit for a pumpkin seed, which you could plant in it one stalk, one seed of a gourd. Now, Rashi says, although we learned the Tzadim and Beis regarding the Malach of Eitzah, we said to be liable, you're only going to be liable carrying out 2 seeds of gourds, because the person would not put in the effort for 1 seed. So why over here are we saying for plowing, you can chayiv even for 1 seed? So Rashi says that's only for Eitzah. When you're going to carry to go out to the field, you're not going to go out with the effort less than 2 seeds. But regarding plowing, each pit, each spot in the ground is significant because you plant separately anyway. So it's not when you're carrying out, you're going through the effort, you're not going to go out. But once you're there and you're planting, every hole, every seed requires its own hole anyway. So every hole is significant. So therefore, even just 1 hole is going to be significant. The Kavasaka by Mishkan, because you find such a parallel by the Mishkan. Because if you plowed even just a small bit, it's fit for 1 stalk for the herbs that they use to make the dyes, and since it's significant, you can be chayiv even for just a minute amount. Now, the Mishnah said, Hamenachish. If someone is weeding, or v'makarsim, or if he's pruning the dried branches, of Hamazaret, if he's pruning the moist branches, we said that even the minute amount you can be chayiv. So tell them in the brisa that it depends what it is that you're detaching it for. Similar to the case of the Mishnah. Hatoilish ulshin, if someone is detaching endives, or v'hamazaret zradim, or if someone's pruning zradim, which Rashi says is a certain type of a reed. Now, what's interesting about these reeds is that when they're moist, so people would usually prune them for people to eat. When they get a little bit hard, it's still fit for animals to eat. When they really dry up, then they're used for fuel. So that's what we're going to say, it depends what you're detaching it for, as the Brisa says. If it's, let's say, still moist, you're taking it off to eat, then it's kagregus. The shiur is going to be, like we said, for Michael Adam, is always the shiur of a dried fig. If it's for the animal, then it's kamloi piagdi, it's the amount of animal for which the amount of a mouthful of a kid goat. If it's for fuel, now Tosfos points out, obviously, if we're saying when it's for fuel, it's not fit for for any consumption, for anyone to eat. Because if not, then you would be chayiv even for the smaller amount of how much an animal could eat. As the Gemara said in Daf Ayin Vav, if you take out straw, it's kamloi pi para, even if you take it for the gamal, but you'll be chayiv for the smaller shiur because it's fit for that anyway. So we're saying that it's not fit for eating, because like we said, as it goes along, it gets drier and drier, so now it's not fit for eating anymore. So it's only fit for fuel, so then that's kedei levashal be'ekal, this amount of cooking an easy egg. And imliapis sakarka, and if you're doing it to make the ground better, then kosher, and then it's going to be chayv in a small minute amount, like we said regarding the malach of chayish. But then the Gemara says, wait a second, atu kulu loy liapis sakarka. I don't understand. Anytime you're doing any of the other ones, let's say you're doing it for the human to eat it, or for the animal to eat it, or whatever it is, isn't it by default making the ground better? So isn't that itself should make you chayiv, even if you're not doing it with that intention? So you should be chayiv for kosher. Why only chayiv if, let's say, the amount that you could cook an egg, or how much you could eat of a gregris? Shouldn't you be chayiv automatically kosher, because when you're detaching these things, you're making the ground better? So automatically, by default, you're doing that malacha. Who cares if that was your intention or not? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Visa Damitavai, they both say, Ba'agim shanu. We're talking about in the swamp. A swamp, you don't have to make it better. In other words, there's no element of those cases are in the swamp, and you're not making it quote better. It's not liyapis like it's not automatically, because a swamp you don't need to make better. So there's no making better of it to make it liyapis like harka. Abayam says no. You could even say it's talking about a field that's not a swamp. But it's not intending to do that. So therefore, since it's davar ein miskaven, we rule like Rabbi Shimon says, if that wasn't your intention, you're going to be potter. On that, that's the Gemara, but they both say, when Rabbi Shimon agrees, if it's you cutting off the head, you think it's not going to die? If it's inevitable, like it's called, if it's for sure going to happen, even Rabbi Shimon agrees you're going to be chayav. So don't tell me you're not intending to make the ground better. If it's not a swampland, it's a regular field, automatically it's going to make it better. Rabbi Shimon agrees you're going to be chayav. So we're back to the question, so even a small amount, you should be chayav. That's the Gemara, we're talking about the ka'avid ba'ar the chavri, where he's doing it in his friend's field. And as Rashi's words are, he doesn't care to make it better. So what does that mean? So Tosfos says that it's a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. It's a malacha that you don't need for it itself. Malacha she'ein tzricha legufa is you want this. Here, when he's doing it, he just wants the product that he's tearing off. He wants to eat it, let's say, or for his animal to eat it. He doesn't want it for the ground, for the gufa of making the ground better, because not my field, it's his field. Now, a very important halacha comes out from this. Tosfos discusses. He brings from the Aruch. Oh, so this is the classic halacha. I'm sure you've heard in halacha. Sometimes it comes up. Tosfos brings from the Aruch. This is called psikresha delay nichile. You have this all the time when you're walking by and there's the light sensors. This is where the classic halacha comes up. Even though it's a psikresha, it's inevitable going to happen. But delay nichile, I don't care for it. I don't want it to happen. So this is the source for that halacha and this sugya, where since he doesn't care for it because it's in his friend's field, so Tosfos has a machlekes if it's mutar l'ketchila, and there's no even rabbinic iser. Tosfos says no. Tosfos says it has to be some. It is a b'diavad, and there has to be some element of tsar, and there is an iser. But this is the source of the halacha psikresha delay nichale. Even though it's inevitable going to happen, it's going to make the ground better. But I don't care for it. It's like ichpeslei or like nichale. But this is the source of that famous halacha that if you don't care about it, even though it's psikresha, there is room to be lenient. Continuing next Mishnah, going on to a different malacha. Hakoisiv shtei oisis. We're doing writing now. One of the other lamates malachas. Someone writes 2 letters. That's the minimum shiur. Whether with his right hand or whether with his left hand. Whether it's from the same ois, the same character, meaning if they're both aleph, let's say. Or bein mishtei shem is whether it's from two characters, let's say an aleph and a beis. Bein mishtei samani is whether it's two types of inks, let's say dioi, which is the ink that we use, let's say for a Sefer Torah, or one sikra, which is a certain type of a red pigment. And b'chol lashon, whether it's any language or any type of script of any country, chayiv, as long as you do two letters, you're going to be chayiv. Now, that's the Tanakama. Amar B'yisi, he says, what do you mean? He says the liability of ksiva on Shabbos is not because of writing, it's really because of markings. Mark is just to make a mark. And he says, you know why? Because Shekach Kreishna Karsha Mishkan. Where do you learn that the Malach of Ksiva from? From the Mishkan. What did they do in the Mishkan? They didn't write any letters. All they did was they would write on the planks of the Mishkan, lay the Eza Ben Zuga to know which one to pair it up with. Meaning they would make a sign on the planks of the Mishkan, because when they would undo it, so then when you're coming back, when you to come to the next destination, so they shouldn't mix up. You order the Krushim, like we had, we spoke about the running the Sukkah. Every year you make the numbers, and you're like, what did we do last year? How come that window was over there and that one's over there? You want to remember where it is. So they did the same thing by the Krushim. They wanted to remember exactly where it is, and there's an element of Mailam Kodesh Ve'Merid also. So that's what Rabbi is coming to say. He says, no, even if you don't even write, even if you just make a marking and just a mark, it would be chayiv, because that's exactly what it was in the Mishkan. It's just a sign. It would be an actual letter itself. And therefore, he says you can be chayiv just with marking itself. Third opinion the Mishnah brings, Rabbi Yehuda, he says, Mitzinu, we find shem katan m'shem gadol. We find that you could be chayiv for a smaller name from a larger name. In other words, let's say shem mishimon or mishmul. Let's say your intention was to write the word Shimon or Shmuel. You ended up only writing the first two letters of it, shem, but shem itself is a name. Or let's say Noich Minacher, you were writing Nacher, and you only wrote the Nun Ches. Well, that's already a name, Noich. Or Dun Midanil, or God Migadil. So what Rabbi Yehuda is coming to tell us is, even if you didn't finish your intended malacha, you intended to write a large name and you only wrote part of it, but that part of it is considered a sustainable word by itself, so then you can be chayiv even if you did not write that whole name. Now, the Gemara explains, Bishlem Yamin Li Chayiv. So we said in the opening halacha of the Mishnah, that when you write two letters, whether with the right hand or the left hand, you can be chayiv. So the Gemara says, "B'shlema you mean lechaver," and you can be chayiv for writing for the right hand. We always know the malachas have to be done in the normal way. So I understand writing with the right hand is the normal way that you write. Ela smoil amai, but with the left hand, why you chayiv in derech ksiv b'kav? It's not the normal way to write with the left hand. That should be considered klachar yad shinoi. Shouldn't be the malacha of ksiva that you write to be chayiv. That Rabbi Yumi says, "Be'iter yad shani." We're talking about a left-handed person. So the Gemara said, "Wait a second. So now you just made the problem the opposite. But have a small today, so then his left should be kimin l'kol amal, like everyone else is right. But vasmoy l'chayv, so then on his left hand you should be chayv. Hayumin lo'chayv. He shouldn't be chayv if he writes with his right hand. His right is your left. So then why? So I understand now why he's chayv on the left. Why is chayv on the right? So Rabbi right, he says no b'sheil b'shtei yada. We're talking about someone who has control in both hands, which is what's known as ambidextrous. He uses both right and left. So when the pitcher comes up, he's going to move any side. You're going to be stuck. That he's switch hitter. He's one of the best plays that you want to have, because whatever is going to happen, he's going to be able to hit the ball. So that's exactly what we're talking about. This type of a person who's chayiv for writing with the right and left is someone that's ambidextrous. That's one interpretation. Rabbi Yaakov Bereid Bas Yaakov, he gives a different interpretation. He says actually, Hamani, who is the time of this Mishnah? It's actually Rabbi Yesihi. The Amad that he said, is the liability of writing two letters, Zel Mishum Reishim, not only because making of a mark. He holds you don't need writing. You just have to make a mark. The left hand is the normal way to make a mark. If you want to just make a mark with something, you see, I use my left hand quite often when I'm using the pencil here with the left hand. That's because for that it's going to work. But if I would have to write the left hand, that wouldn't work so well. So the time of the Mishnah says you chayv with the left hand is like Rabbi Yesi. That's of course normal to do with the left hand. Therefore you chayv for the right and the left hand. Says Gemara, wait a second. How can you say it's Rabbi Yesi? The Sefer Rabbi Yesi. We're talking about the Tanakama. Later on in the Mishnah we mentioned Rabbi Yesi. If later on the Mishnah is Rabbi Yesi, so Reish love Rabbi Yesi. Obviously the Reish is not Rabbi Yesi. How can you say the Tanakama is Rabbi Yesi, who says you chayv on the left hand? Says the Gemara, no, cool Rabbi Yesi. It's all Rabbi Yesi, like some Gemaras have here on the side, bringing from Rashi elsewhere that the Tana forgot to mention his name. Therefore, later on in the discussion, we find this other place in Shas. They mention his name, that you should know that is the Tana. Here also, actually the Tana of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yesi. Now we mentioned in the Mishnah Rabbi Yehuda, he says Mitzinu. He says we find that although usually you're not chayiv until your intended malacha that you intended to do it, you intend to write Shimon or Shmuel, and you wrote only two letters of it, Shane, so you can be chayiv. So on that, the Gemara makes the following diik and asks it as a question. El Rabbi Yehuda. Sounds like from the case Rabbi Yehuda gave. Shtei oisius, if you write 2 letters, which that's a minimum for ksiva, vein shnei shemers, and they're 2 different types of letters. That's where Yehuda mechayev. That's where you're going to be chayev, because those are the cases he picked in the Mishnah. Not letters that are the same. Shin and mem, nun and ches. The letters that he picked were different types of letters. Then when you write 2 letters with the 2 different types of characters, then you're going to be chayev. But it sounds like, for the fact that he didn't say this, which is a bigger chiddush, shtei oisis vehin shem echad, if you write 2 letters that are from the same character, like Rashi brings, for example, sheshach, which is the name of Bavel, if you write just shesh, or let's say from the word tesnan, you write tes, or from the word chachim, you write chach, which is a bracelet. It sounds like lo mechayev. But you hold you not chayev, because if he could have said a case that even if it's the same letter, that you're going to be chayev, he doesn't. All the cases he brings are different letters. He doesn't bring a case of the same letter. Sounds like we hold that you wouldn't be chayev, you'd be potter. And that's the Gemara, a contradiction. And again, in classic Talmudic style, we're going to go through a price over here, which is going to bring 4 different opinions. One of the opinions is going to be Rabbi Yehuda, and from that opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to see that it contradicts what we're saying in the inference of the halacha of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara Batani Litna Brisa. There's a pasuk in the Yikra that says in Perek Dal pasuk Beis, it says Va'asa Achas, that if a person's going to do one thing that's wrong in the Torah, he has to bring a carbon. So the word Achas sounds like one, which sounds like a whole unit. So Yachal, you would think based on this pasuk Achiyichtav Kol Hashem, until you write the whole word. The Rashi says here Shem means the word, not like before, which we said it means a character. So you would think you only have until you write the whole word. Or Va'achiyeri Kol HaBeged, until you weave the whole garment. Va'achiyasi Kol HaNafa, you make the whole sieve, which is a certain type of a strainer, because it says the word Achas, one whole unit. Oh no, Tamalim is another pasuk in Perek Dal pasuk Beis in Vayikra that says Me'achas, from. Va'asa Me'achas meina, from the one. Now the word from sounds like not the whole thing, from. Oh, so Ime'achas, if we only had the pasuk from the one, Yachal, you would think, you didn't write one letter, you weave only one thread, and you make only one heddle eye of the sieve, which Rashi explains. What are we talking about? A heddle eye over here is that when you would mount the reeds of the warp thread, so when you're weaving the weft thread, so you put over under. So those are called, in this context, bottom. And those are what locks the warp thread when you're going through them, and that maintains the weaving. Now, one bias would not sustain itself. Rashi says, because it's not threads in this sieve, it's actually made out of palm fronds, so we call it a bias, like bati nirin, because it doesn't have any bati nirin. It doesn't have like heddle rings like you have by threads. You just weave the actual palm fronds itself. But the point is that if you do only one over or one under, that's called like bias echad. Now that wouldn't sustain itself. But if you said me'achas, I would think, okay, you write one letter, you weave one thread, you make one over or under of the sieve. That me'achas sounds like from one. And even if you do only part of it, you'd be chayev. As we continue on Talmud Beis, Talmud Leimer, that's what the pasuk says. No achas, it says one, which sounds like it has to be a whole malacha. So haketza, it says the Brisa, how does this actually work, and what does this mean that if it's going to be me'achas or achas? On the one hand, the word achas sounds like that has to be a whole unit, and me'achas sounds like it could be part of that. So says the Brisa, yeah, it's somewhere in the middle. This is exactly the source. You're not going to be liable until you write a small name from a large name. So you have Shemesh, Shimon, and Mishmul. You have Noach Minacher. You have Dam Midaniel. You have Gad Migadiel. So essentially what it means to say is, yes, it has to be achas, it has to be a whole unit. But me'achas say it doesn't have to be the whole unit. It has to be a whole unit that's part of a larger unit. So therefore, when you write Shem or you write Noach, it's me'achas, because you didn't write the whole word that you wanted to write, but it's still a whole unit of Shem, of Noach. It's not one letter, which would not be significant. Therefore, Rashi says the same thing as regarding the garment. When you have 2 threads, or by the sieve, when you put 2 compartments, then it could be sustained like that, because a person doesn't weave the whole garment in one day. He doesn't make the sieve in necessarily one shot. But in the beginning, when he does it that it will last, that it won't undo itself. That's like me'achas. It's achas, it's a whole unit, because it'll stay. But it's also me'achas, because you didn't do the whole garment. That is the halacha that we're seeing over here regarding the 2 letters. It's achas, but it's also at the same time me'achas. That's the Tanna Kamma's opinion. The second opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, I mean, this is where the question is ultimately going to be from. He says, no, even if he didn't write from a larger word, he says, not like the Tanakama. Tanakama said that you have to write the two letters from the larger word, which sounds like that's actually what Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying in our Mishnah. Here Rabbi Yehuda says, which seems to contradict, as we're going to conclude, that even if it's two letters that has the same character, chayv is going to be chayv. You're going sheish, seis, ror, which means to ooze, gag, roof, chacha, bracelet, meaning to say, even if these are from larger words, you intended to write, let's say, a name called Sheish Batzer, which is brought in Sefer Ezra, and you wrote only Sheish. Or from Sheishach, or from Sheshamim, you wrote just the word Shin Shin. Or let's say you wrote Teis from Tisra'u, Lama Tisra'u, why are you all afraid? Or from the word Titnu. And for sure, let's say if you intended to write only the original small two letters in the first place, but even if you intended to write a larger word, and you wrote two of the same letters, you're still going to be chayav. That's the second opinion. The first opinion said, yes, Shem Kat and Shem Gadol, but it sounds like that those are only two different letters. Here, it's even if it's the same letter, same character, you do it two times, you're going to be chayav. A third opinion, Amr B'Yesi, says, wait a second, and we already quoted him in the Mishnah too. What do you think the liability is because of writing? The whole liability of Ksiv on Shabbos is because you're making a mark. Shekin Rishon like Karshe Mishkan, because he would make marks on the planks of the Mishkan. Leida Ezi Ben Zucker, to know which one it pairs up with. Lafika, so he says a chiddush. He says Sarat Srita Achas Hashneim Nisar. Let's have two boards lined up, one next to the other, and you make one mark on the two boards. Oy Shtei Sritas Al Nesar Echad. If you make two marks on one board, Chayiv, you can be Chayiv, because it just has to have two boards having a mark. So even if you make one mark, but it's on two different boards, so you already did the malach of Ksiv on Shabbos, because you don't have to write any letters. It just has to be making a mark in two different places. So the two could be two acts on one board, or it could even be one mark on two different boards. That can be chayav.
So usable only if it consists of a word.
Right, exactly.
Not if the two letters are meaningless.
Right, so we can actually see that regarding what's considered meaningful or meaningless. I think I was going to discuss that shortly to explain, because we're quoting four different Tanakh opinions here, and they all seem to be very similar. And the Gemara is going to differentiate. So far, again, the first opinion said, which is Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, basically, Shem Kat and Shem Gadol. You could write a small name from a larger name, still getting the chayav. Second opinion was Rabbi Yehuda, who contradicts himself, as we see that he says even if it's the same letter. Third opinion is that even just making a mark is chayav. The fourth opinion, Rabbi Shimon, he says, it says in the pasuk va'asa achas. As we said, you do one. Now, if based on that, when it says the word achas one, so Yachal, you would think Achiyachtam is Kol Hashem, you're only going to write the whole name, which is achas, a whole unit. Or Achiyar Kol Beged, until you read the whole garment. Achiyas is Kol Enough, until you make the whole sieve. Tamalam me'achas, it says no, from the one. Now, again, Ima achas, if it said from the one, Yachal Fil Kasav Elois achas, you would think you'd be chayiv even if you read only one letter. Even if you only weave one thread. Even if you only make one, and if you're wondering would this sounds familiar, the Gemara is going to ask that question. Sounds like that this fourth opinion of Shimon is the same thing as the Tanakh. Didn't the Tanakh just say these words? Aren't we repeating ourselves? Don't worry, you didn't fall asleep and right deja vu. It sounds like the same words. And even if you made only one place in the seat, that's what the that's what the pasuk teaches achas, which has to be a whole unit. It can't just be one thread that you're weaving, one letter that you're writing. So haketza, how are you resolving that? Says Reb Shimon, you're not chayav until you make a type of a work that will endure. The Gemara is going to ask that this sounds like the same like the Tanakh. Now we bring Rabbi Yisi again. Rabbi Yisi, he says something else. Once you introduce that pasuk, Reb Shimon, he says a different idea. It says va'asa achas. When it says in the pasuk, it says va'asa me'achas mehena. If someone does from these things that are forbidden in the Torah, and he does it by mistake, he has to bring a korban. Now the words va'asa me'achas mehena, he expounds. It says you could put the word va'asa on achas if he does one. You can put on the word va'asa hena, he does these. What does that mean? Is it one or is it these? Is it singular or is it many? So that's what Rabbi Yisi says, and we had this already once before in our Masechta. Sometimes you can be chayiv one liability for all the malachas that you're doing. Sometimes you can be chayiv on all of them individually. So therefore it says, something it'll be achas, something it'll be hena. That's the conclusion of the brayso, and we'll get back to this teaching of Rabbi Yisi. But one thing says the Gemara, Ktani Mia, we learned in the brayso, he says, and this is the main point that we brought in the brayso for. Says even if you write two letters that are the same character, let's say two aleph or two bays or two gimels, whatever it is, that contradicts the inference of our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda was quoting the Mishnah as saying Shem Kat and Shem Gadol, which the cases he brought were only two different letters, Shin and Mem, Nun and Ches, Gimel and Dalid, Gad from Gadil, Noach from Nacher, Shem from Shimon and Shmuel. So that contradicts. Says Lekhash not difficult. You know why? Because Hadi Day in our Mishnah was his own opinion. The rabbi in the Brisa was going like his teacher. The time we learned the Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Gamliel, I feel like possible the Isis, even if writing two letters, they ain't Shem Echad, it's the same character. Could go in Sheish, Teis, Rar, Gag, Chach. So therefore, these are all the opinions. So when Rabbi Yehuda is quoting the Brisa as the second opinion, really the first opinion is like his own opinion in the Mishnah. The second opinion that he quotes, even if the same character is going like his own Rebbe, Rabbi Gamliel, that's who he's going like in the Brisa. Fine, that takes care of those first two opinions. The problem is, says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon Hainu Tanakama. Rabbi Yosef, we understand he says making a mark, he's the most stringent of them all. But then the fourth opinion, Rabbi Shimon Hainu Tanakama. The Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon are both saying the same thing. When we say the Tanakama, we actually mean Rabbi Yehuda in the name of his Rebbe. That even if you write two letters, Sheish, Teis, sounds like you're going to be chayiv. So what's the difference? Says the Gemara, V'chitem, and this is what was mentioned before. V'chitem, if you're going to say Aleph, Azreka, when you have the word in Yeshaya, it says, I will gird you. There's two Alephs over there, Azreka. The Aleph, the first Aleph, is actually a prefix. I will, Azreka, gird you. If you're going to say that's Ikibenai, that's a difference between the two different opinions, because here you have two letters that are the same character from a larger word. But we don't find any smaller word called A'a. It's not a Shem Kat and Shem Gadol. It's not even the same letter. It's not a Shem Kat and Shem. There's no word Aleph. If you're going to say that's the difference between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon, which is the Tanakama Saba, the Tanakama, which is Rabbi Yehuda, he held Aleph does record loy mechayiv nak mechayiv, because it's not a Shem Kat and Shem Gadol. Even if it's the same letter, where you hold that the same character, you could be chayiv two letters. So the word Gag is a word. The word Rar to Uz is a word. But Aleph is not a word. Where do you find in the Torah anywhere in Tanakh such a word? So you're not going to be chayiv. But Shimon Saba holds yes, because it's not based on Shem Kat and Shem Gadol. His words are important. He says, what was Reb Shimon's words? He says, people will write Aleph. Wait, who's going to write Aleph? Is Kivan the Isa Biglat Toyer Ba'alma, as Rashi brings, the people who write amulets, and they write different writings of sorcery, they would normally write certain words of two letters, even though they're not words elsewhere. They would write Aleph. So therefore, according to Reb Shimon, Chayiv would be Chayiv. Is that what is the machlekes between Reb Shimon and the Tanakama? If you write Aleph, which is not a smaller word, but it's still something people would write, says you can't say that. Because remember, is that to say that Reb Shimon L'chomer comes, Reb Shimon's the most stringent opinion then. Because he holds, even if it's not even a smaller name, it's just two letters, but some people might use it, you'd be chayiv. But for time you learn the Brisa, Reb Shimon is not the most stringent opinion, he's the more lenient opinion. Where do we find this? Because the Brisa says as follows, HaKideach Kolshu. If someone drills even just a small amount of a hole, it doesn't go through and through to the other side, it just drills a small hole. So the Tanakhama says, chayiv, you can be chayiv. So to Hamagara, if someone is scraping a pole or piece of parchment, which is a talad, a derivative of mamachik, of smoothing. So kol even if you do a small amount, you're going to be chayiv. So to hama'abed, if someone is tanning a piece of leather, kol a minute amount is going to be chayiv. So to hatzor b'kli if someone is engraving a design in a vessel, kol minute amount from the figure is already going to be chayiv. That's the Tanakama. Shimon, he disagrees, and we see he's the more lenient interpretation. He says, no, Achi Kadech is kula until you go and make a hole through and through. Achi Girigra is kula until you scrape the whole thing. Achi Abed is kula until you tan the whole thing. Achi Yatsu kula until you carve out the whole thing, which is whatever your original intention was to do, to scrape or to tan in the beginning. That has to be done at that one shot. So you see, you need to do the whole thing. So the same would be for the writing. So you can't say he's the most stringent interpretation of the writing, that even Aleph, you can be chayiv for anything. He's the more lenient interpretation, only until you do the whole thing. So Ella rather says, actually, based on what you said, we have the answer of what's the difference between Reb Shimon and the Tanakama. Reb Shimon what he's actually coming to tell us actually is a leniency. Until you write the whole word. When he says the word, if you're doing a malacha shekayitza miskayemes, he means to say that it'll be exactly as your intention was. Your intention was to write a whole word. You're only going to be liable until you write the whole word. So actually, he's the more lenient interpretation of the halacha of the ksiyah. Says Gemara, could you really say this? That you have to write the whole word? But time in the Brisa, which we quoted before, what were the words of Shimon Leimer? He says, V'asa achas. He says, the pasuk says you do one. Based on that pasuk, it sounds like Yochel Kula until you write the whole word. Tamalem me'achas. He says, no, from the one, which sounds like you don't need to write the whole word. So how can you say his interpretation is that you have to write the whole word when you see me'achas? He said means only from the one. You don't have to write the whole word, which therefore we thought it meant that just writing 2 letters, because people will write 2 letters, and we said no, you can't. But how could you say you need to write the whole word? Says the Gemara, Torah Tzvei Mahachi. No, you should amend the wording there in Reb Shimon in the Brisa to say Yochalat Sheyiftabas Pasuk Kulei. You would think you have to write the whole pasuk you intended to write, because you intended to write a whole pasuk. Tamalema, that's what we learn from me'achas. No, even from the one, as long as it's an achas, even though it's a me'achas, even though it's not the whole sentence, but it's the whole word, then you can be chayav. But again, Reb Shimon is the most lenient of them all. That was the opinion of Reb Shimon. Now the Gemara brings, we mentioned Rabbi Yisi, and Rabbi Yisi said,
so Shimon, according to Shimon, if you write Shem Shimon, it's not
right,
enough.
exactly.
You have to write
the whole word that you intended to do, like we generally have. Because here actually it's a chiddush that you could be chayiv in part that you did. We generally say only you did what you intended to do. But that's where they bring psukim. Me'achas, he learns me'achas means say not the whole pasuk, but actually the whole word. Now Rabbi Yisi, this is a little bit complicated, but we've had this before in the Masechta, and this is not the primary thing of our daf, but once we introduced it, the Gemara, it was brought here in the Brisa. Rabbi Yisi, he said, because Reb Shimon quoted this pasuk, he says, the pasuk says, va'asa ma'achas mean, if you do from one of these things, you can be chai. So what's va'asa achas? It says on the one hand, you could read va'asa achas, and you could also read the va'asa heina. You do one, or you do them. What does that mean? Why is the pasuk writing va'asa me'achas me'heina? To tell you, and sometimes you can be liable one liability for all the malachas that you did. Sometimes you can be liable for each one individually. What does this mean? So Rabbi Yisi says like this: is my time Rabbi Yisi? What's the reason of Rabbi Yisi? In other words, how does he expound this idea? So it's like this: achas, meaning the Torah should have written achas, and then stopped. If achas, if some of those one of the averes in the Torah is going to be chai b'chatas. But then it writes me'achas. It writes from the one, which is an extra mem. And also, the whole word based on this, meheina, is extra. It's just right vasa achas. Fine, right? Vasa me'achas. Fine. But why are we writing the word meheina? The whole word meheina is extra. So too, that you could say heina. It should have just written heina. And vasa heina, you do these. What's meheina? It's an extra mem. And also, if you're writing the word heina, then the whole word me'achas is extra. So therefore, actually, we're coming to expound all these different things. We're coming to expound achas and heina without the mems, and then with the mems, as the Gemara explains. Achas shehi heina, you could have one that's many, or you could have a heina she'achas, you could have many that's one. So there's 2 ways to expound it. You could say, if someone does one avera, it's going to be like heina, means he's going to chayv many chatois. Or you could say va'asa achas means to say that his one doing will be considered like one, even though it's really heina, which sounds like that even though you're doing many averis, which is heina shehi achas, that therefore you'll be chayv only one. So since you could expound it both ways, so we expound it both ways, and we say sometimes it's this way, sometimes it's this way, as the Gemara is going to explain right now. Achas, when it says achas, that means shimon. In other words, we're coming to expound the extra mem. If you wrote just the word achas, it would sound like you're not chayv until you write the whole word that you intended to write, which is shimon. When you write me achas, what are you writing me achas? Is to tell you shem is shimon. It's coming to tell you that even if you only wrote part of the word, as long as it's sustainable somewhere else, that it's similar to the beginning, it's going to be you can be chayv for that too. Heina, when it says them, that sounds like a avos. That's the av malach. Meheina from them is a teilades, is a derivative from that, from heina. That's what you learn out from the 2 mems. Again, from mei achas you learn out shem shimon, and meheina you learn out the liability of a teilades to be chayv b'chatas. Now, achas sheheina, this that we said before, and this was also mentioned of ayin base, that you could sometimes have one that's many. That's talking about zadin Shabbos v'shigis malachas, where you knew it was Shabbos, but you didn't know all these malachas are forbidden. So even though it's really only one act of chil Shabbos, you can have in every single malacha because they're different malachas, what's called gufi malachas machalkin, since you have many mistakes you're making regarding each malacha. So that's achas sheyein, it's one isra of chil Shabbos, so you have for many different liabilities. And so they have Heina Shiachas. Many, that's one. Which you have Shiga Shabbos result in Malachas. You have, if you, let's say, you didn't know that it's Shabbos, but you knew the things you're doing are Malachas, so even though you're doing many different acts of Malacha on Shabbos, you're laundering, you're smoking, you're doing all these different things, you only mechayev one thing because it's one mistake that you're doing. You knew these things are Malachas, you didn't know it was Shabbos. You fell asleep, you woke up 17 hours later and you thought it's still Friday and you're taking a smoke and you're going outside. What are you doing? We just came back from shul. You came back from shul? What? Right? So I'm saying, even though you did many malachas, that's Zadei malachas Shiga Shabbos, that's going to be Heinashi Achas. You mechayev only one. That's again what we learned out from this pasuk according to Rabbi. Again, that's not what we're discussing over here, but that's the you're learning out Mei Achas, the Mem, which is telling you Shem Shimon. Mei Heina, you're learning out to others. And why say Achas and Heina? To tell you something is Achas She'ena, something is Heina She'achas. Now we said that Rabbi Yehuda, one of the things we mentioned in the Mishnah was Metzina Shem Kat Meshem Gadol, which we mentioned many times in this daf. That you could be chayiv, even though you intended to write Shimon or Shmuel, you could be chayiv if I'm just writing the Shin and the Mem. Says the Gemara, me dummy? The Gemara asked the question that seems to be self-evident. If you intended to write Shimon, and you end up writing Shem, what type of mem are you writing? You're writing what's called a mem pesucha. You're writing an open mem. How can you say that's a davar shem miskayim? That's something that people will generally write, even though you intended to write Shimon, but just writing Shem mem, people will write that too. So that's considered Shem kat meshem gol. That's me'achas. You're going to be chayev. That's not true, because mem de shem sasum. When you're writing the word shem, you write with a mem stuma, which we call an endamem, a mem sofit. Mem de Shimon is pesuach, is open. So when you're writing Shimon and you stop at the Shem mem, that's not miskayim. That's not malacha shem miskayemes. That's not how people write it, because no one's writing with an open mem. So how can you say you can be chayiv writing Shem kat meshem gadol? So Rav Chizki says this actually comes to tell us that sasam va'asam pesuach, if it's closed and you made it open, that then it's going to be kosher. It's going to be kosher. When you write a Sefer Torah and you write the mem sofit, instead you write a mem pesuach. When you're writing the word shame, let's say you write a regular mem, not an endamem, it's going to be kosher. That's what you see from over here. It says the Gemara asks from the following brisa on Rav Chizda. Pasuk says in the Varim, famous pasuk uchsavtam, that you should write them, which is going on tefillin and mezuzah. So what does the word uchsavtam mean? Shetei chesivatam. The word chesavtam also has two words inside of it. You should write. It should be a script that's tama, that's complete, which means it should be halachically complete. Which the brisa goes at a lengthy to show that you have to write it complete in the right way. You shouldn't write it instead of an aleph and ayin, or ayin and aleph instead of an ayin and aleph. Meaning some would write it like that because they're similarly pronounced. Don't write it aleph and ayin, though you can't switch an aleph and an ayin. Or let's say beis and chafin, instead of writing a beis you write a chaf, or chaf and beis instead of a chaf you write a beis, because they're very similar also. It's just a one little line sticking out by the beis. It looks very similar. Or gamin tzadin or tzadin gamin, switching a gimel with a tzadi, because they are actually very similar also because they both have a leg. It's just that the tzadi has a leg coming out on the top and the gimel has a leg coming out on the bottom. So don't confuse those either. Or dalsin, reishin, dalsin, mixing up the dal with a reish is also very similar. Just the dal that has a little thing coming out on the top, or if that little missing is it would be like a reish. Or hey and ches, the ches and hey, and the hey and the ches is also very similar. It's just that there's little space between the hey at the top. So again, don't mix up a hey with a ches, because if it's touching the top, it's like a ches. Vav and yud and vav, mixing up a vav with a yud, because a yud, you make it a little bit longer, already looks like a vav. Or zayin and nunin, making a zayin like a nun. When we mean a nun, we mean an endanun, which is a straight down line. It's also very similar to a zayin in the Torah, because the nun has also a little that on the top, and you go straight down, you go a little bit longer, it looks like an endanun. Or nun and zayin. Or you also shouldn't write tesin, pefin, or peifin, tesin. Don't mix up a pay with a test, because a pay, as actually Taisi brings from Beinu Tam, obviously he proves from here that the test has to go inside itself. The test goes inside, so it looks like a pay with a zayin. The seifim, there's certain mystical secrets in the Torah that you understand that when you write a test, it has puz, it has the pay zayin inside of it, because a test is like essentially like a zayin on its left side and a pay on its right side. So when you're writing a test, don't mix up with a pay or a pay with a test. Or kafufin, those which are bent over. There's certain letters, a chaf, a pei, a tzadi, a nun, that have the regular word, which is bent over. Don't make them pshutin, which when you what we call the sofit, the enda chaf, enda pei, enda tzendi, endi. All these have they get straightened out when they're enda, when they're at the sofit. don't confuse those. I'm shooting kluf, don't make the ones that are supposed to be straight bent over. Also, mem and smachen. Be careful with a mem and a samach, because a mem sofit, and a mem, is very similar to a samach. It's a closed circle. Samachin mem, and don't mix up the samach with the mem. And this is the punchline. Situmin, those which are supposed to be closed, which is a mem situma, the end of mem, don't make that pesuchin, don't make it an open mem, or pesuchin stumin, don't make the open mem into a closed mem. So to a parsha pesucha le'yisen stuma, don't make an open chapter in the Torah into a closed chapter. Certain times you have to keep it open from when it goes to the next chapter, sometimes closed. And stuma le'yisen pesucha, don't make a closed one into open one. Also kisava, if you write a sefer Torah kashir like a song, meaning in the Torah there's certain places like a song, like by Az Yashir or by Hazinu, which is gaps of, let's say, a half a brick on a space beneath it of like a whole brick, which you see by Az Yashir, you see there's these wide open gaps. You're not allowed to write the regular sefer Torah like that. Or if you wrote the shira, not the way a shira, but rather you wrote it like the way a sefer Torah is written. Or you write it without black ink. Or you write the names of God in gold lettering. You have to take such a sefer Torah, like we spoke with all these different cases, and hide it away and bury it because it's puzzle. So wait a second. You just told me that an endemem and the mem pesucha could be switched. What do you mean? Do you see a brisa clearly? It's a puzzle sefer Torah. They can be switched. We're back to the question. How can you say that you write shem mishima and that it's the normal way of writing? No. If you write shin mem with an open mem, it's not considered valid. It's going to be puzzle. Says Gemara, you're right. This brisa is not like Rav Chizda, but who damekaitan? He holds like the following brisa. Time like Linda brisa. Hudam say Rami says Nema b'sheni. He says in the second day of Sukkot. On Sukkot, all the different days have different amount of karbanas. On the second day of Sukkot, it says v'nis kehem, and their libations. Now it could have just said v'niska. The endemem is extra. So that's one letter that's extra. B'shisha, in the sixth day of Sukkot, it says unesacheha, and its libations, the yud is extra. It could have just said v'niska. B'shri, in the seventh day of Sukkot, it says kimishpatam, like their laws. It could have just said kimishpat. What's kimishpatam? So you have three extra letters from the 3 days of the nesachim of Sukkot. Hare mem yud mem. It's alluding to another nisuch that it doesn't say explicitly in the Torah. It's telling you the water. There's nisach hamayim, where we do a whole simchas beis she'eva, is mem yud mem, which is mayim, which is water. Mekayim rem is nisach hamayim in that Torah. Here's the illusion of where you have on Sukkot the pouring of the water from the Torah that was done specifically on Sukkot. All year round they would do the wine libation. The water libation was done on Sukkot. But one thing you see is that the first mem of the word mayim is from v'niskehem. V'niskehem is the end of mem, and yet you're using it as the opening mem for the word mayim. So obviously, if you have what's supposed to be an open mem and you make it a closed mem as it is in the Torah of v'niskehem, is going to be kosher. Asa says the Gemara, and the fact that you see what's supposed to be an open mem, you make an end of mem, it's going to be valid. So then, sasam nami, when it's closed too. Sasam v'asam pesuach, if it's supposed to be closed and you make it open, then it's going to be kosher. So when you're writing shame from Shimon, it's going to be considered kosher l'skayim b'makam, even though no one writes the word shame with an open mem. But that's the same thing like you see in the Torah, that a closed mem is going to be like an open mem. So an open mem is going to be like a closed mem, and therefore that's the source for his opinion, like that Tana, that you see that, yes, it is going to be the same thing, and that's why Shem Kat and Shem Gadol you could be chai. Some of these we spoke about in today's Daf, in Shabbos Daf Kof Gimel, was, we explained the halacha that said Zeh HaKlal, this is the rule, what's it coming to include? We said it's coming to include Dav HaMeskayim, which is, what is that case, the thing that's going to last, and if you do it on Shabbos, you can be chayim. It's even if you chak kafiza b'kava, even though it's only 3/4 that you carved it out, but since some people keep like that, it's considered Dav HaMeskayim, that's the chiddush in that halacha, and you're going to be chayim. And we also explained the halacha of Shmuel in the Mishnah that says that if you bang with a hammer on the animal, you're going to be chayiv, even as in the Mefarshim explained, the Rishonim, even if it's b'shas malacha, what are you doing then? It's not because of your training your hand, because then if you're just watching, someone should also be chayiv, but you're not. Rather, it's because we find in the Mishkan, they would bang the gold plates, they would do that, and it should be smooth, that's considered a malacha of makkah b'patish, literally it's makkah b'patish, but also in the more figurative sense, it's the malacha of makkah b'patish, because it's making it smooth, that it doesn't pierce the very thin gold plates that they would make for the crushing. Then we had a new mission that said also other things you chayv for kolshu. So we had for plowing, we had for pruning, we had for that's weeding, pruning, 2 types, one for moist branches, one for dry branches. So regarding chayrish, we said, why are you chayiv for a kolshu? So he says, yeah, it's fit for just one pumpkin seed, because in the Mishkan also they would do for every seed, every spot is significant that you plant where you just plowed. This should be said in the Mishnah, certain cases and in the Gemara, when you're doing an act like, say, like picking branches, it depends what your intention for. If it's to fix, then it's even a kosher. We said it's significant, everything that you're fixing. If it's to use for fuel, then it's the amount of cooking the aggregates of an egg from a chicken. If you're picking grass, also, if it's to fix even a kosher. If it's for an animal, then it's going to be kamlei piagdi, which is the amount for animal fodder. That's the chiv in halacha. So too in the Gemara we said a similar halacha, a similar case of someone who picks endar. So here it depends 4 different ways. If it's for eating, kagregas. If it's for animal, that's kamlei piagdi. If it's for hasik, be'akal. If it's liabasek karka, then it's kosher. The Gemara says, wait a second, aren't they all automatically by default being miyapa the karka? So they all should be kosher. So the Gemara, no, either to the swamp where you're not being miyapa the karka, or the Gemara originally says you're not intending. And the Gemara says, yeah, but psik reisha is not intending. The Gemara says, no, it's ba'ar dechavri. So what does that tell you? So as it tells you about psik reisha, diloi nichalei, where I don't care, that's making it better. Yes, even with psik reisha, there is a leniency to because it's loi nichalei that it's going to be either mutter or it's not going to be the chiv dairaisa. We continue with the next Mishnah regarding Malach of Kaisim. Someone writes 2 letters, whether with his right hand or with his left hand, or 1 character or 2 different characters, or if it's 2 different types of dyes, or any language doesn't make a difference, you're going to be chayav. That was a Tani Kamer. Bisi says, of course you're chayav. You're chayav even just making a mark, because that's what they did by the crush of the Mishnah. Yehuda says, you're going to be chayav even if you make Shem Katan from a Shem Gadol. So if you intended to write Shimon or Shmuel, if you write the Shinem, it's already a name in its own right. Even if it's not what you intended to write, you're going to be chayav. So the Gemara says, why are you chayav for the left hand? It's not the normal way of writing. So it says, either we're talking about someone who's ambidextrous, or it's going like a Bisi who holds Yichai for Rishon. Bisi is quoted later in the Mishnah. It's all Bisi, just mention them later on in the Mishnah. Yehuda, from the halacha of the Mishnah, sound like from the cases he gave, let's say Shem from Shmuel, that it's only if it's 2 letters from 2 different types of characters. You have a Shin, and you have a Mem. But it would sound like that if you do the same letter, let's say Sheish, or Gag, or Rar, that then you would be Patur. The problem is, there's a brisa that he's quoted as saying that even if it's the same letter. I think Gemara says, yeah, that was the name of his Rebbe, that it's going to be even if it's the same character. And that's the brisa that we quoted that has 4 different opinions quoted. You have the Tanakama that says, it says Achas and Me'achas, to tell you Shem Katan Shem Gadol, which that's actually Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah. Then we had Rabbi Yehuda who's quoted, but that we said it was really his Rebbe, that even if it's 2 letters from the same character, yours are going to be Chayav. Sheish, Rar, all those are going to be Chayav. Then Rabbi Yisi says, of course, you didn't write a letter. You just make 2 markings. The 4th of Rabbi Shimon, he was quoted as saying, until you do malacha shakiyus b'meskemes. The Gemara says, wait a second, doesn't that sound like the same thing as the Tanakama or Rabbi Huda, whatever you want to say, that you write 2 letters because people will write Shem, Rar, Gag. So that the Gemara says, yes, it's not that he's the most stringent, he's actually the most lenient interpretation. He says, you only come until you write the whole name, which is the whole word. He says me'achas. Me'achas tells you have to write the whole pasuk. You have to write the whole word. Then we quoted a 5th opinion in general. Once we quoted the pasuk v'asa ma'achas mehena was Rabbi Yisi, that he says you could read of v'asa achas, you could read of v'asa hena, which comes to tell you something michayev 1 on them all, and something michayev many on, depending if it's zigish zodin Shabbos or zodin malachas. What it is, and he also explained me'achas and mehena, the extra mems. Me'achas telling you shem kat shem gadol, and mehena is telling you telavs. Then we explained the halacha of the Mishnah Yehuda, who says shem kat shem gadol michayev. How could you say that? The mem of shame is an endamem. From Shimon, it's an open mem. How could you say that if you stop at shame over here, that you did something significant? So because it says, obviously, that means to say that it's going to be kosher. And the Sefer Torah, if you switch it around, it's going to be kosher. The Gemara says, no, it's machlokes tanoim. Because the first brisa says in the Sefer Torah it's going to be apostle. And the second brisa, we see it's going to be kosher. How so? Because what's the remes for Nisach HaMayim on Sukkot? It's that we find that it's alluded to in the pasuk. You have a mem in one place, you have a yud in another place, and you have a mem in another place. What that teaches you is that's the word mayim that we get alluded to in the nisach, on the nesachim of Sukkot, but from the fact that you have what's supposed to be open, because this mem should be open, and you make it sasum is kosher, so then sasum, and you make it pasuach, which is shame from the word Shmuel, that also, that mem will also be considered kosher, and therefore to be chayav for writing on Shabbos with Shem Katan Shem Gadol. Thank you to any time for hosting us.